What's up, guys? So I wanted to do this really quick, and it's going to be a quick one, but this has been coming up a lot over the last week, and I've been meaning to do a video on it, so I just felt like I'm super inspired to do it right now, so I'm just going to talk about it. Free flow, riff status, all of the things. So we have a tendency to think about things as right and wrong. And we will tell ourselves that we are doing something wrong. And if there's one thing that I love to talk about, it's the fact that, I've even done a speech detox for Patreon in the past, but it's not about necessarily the words we use, but the intention behind them. And so when it comes to telling ourselves that we did something wrong, the intention behind that isn't great for us, in the sense that it doesn't allow us to encourage ourselves to continue. We're sort of scolding ourselves when we tell ourselves we've done something wrong. So a week or so ago, I did this to myself where I was like, oh, I did that wrong. And it was over something really small. And I realized that, I had gotten the hang of what I'm about to share with you with the big things, but still wasn't doing it with the small things. And that's this idea that rather than thinking about something as right and wrong, think about it as, is this the intended outcome or not? Because we think about productivity and failure in our lives far too often. It's especially where I'm from in the Silicon Valley, like the way you're raised. I was just explaining this to somebody today, that for me, growing up where I did, the preppy girls weren't the prettiest girls. They were the girls that got the best grades and did the best in sports. And then the prettiest of them were like the top of the food chain. But for me, the preppy, popular girls were the best at things because we were raised to be overachievers. And so this is something that I'm still working on, even though, like I said, for the big things, I've mastered it. But thinking about things in terms of the intended outcome versus not intended outcome allows us to start opening our mind up to the possibility that it's actually what we wanted to happen, or even if it's not what we wanted to happen, or sorry, that's not what I meant to say. It allows us to start opening up our minds to the idea that even if it's not what we wanted to happen, it might still be a good thing because we live in a supportive universe. And even if we didn't want it to happen and it doesn't really provide us with any benefits, we can start to recognize that mistakes happen. We can learn from them and move on rather than sit and dwell on them and let them cause trauma within us, basically. So the next time you find yourself thinking about things in terms of right and wrong, I want you to start asking yourself, how can I start remembering to think about this in terms of intended outcome and unintended outcome, so that I can start opening my mind to the possibility that this wasn't the wrong thing, whether or not it was the intended outcome, and that everything is an adventure in life. Everything provides us with a lesson that we can move forward to better with, rather than stay stuck in the muck, trying to go back to normal. Because when we can open up our minds to the spiritual levels of consciousness, which start with just these little simple things, like consciously thinking about things rather than letting ourselves run rampant on autopilot, life becomes magical. Like, no joke. When we can start to free ourselves of this programming and expand our consciousness with even these little practical things, these spiritual levels of consciousness that we can reach abound. They are spectacular and amazing. And all I can do is encourage you to try it. Choose again. Notice when it happens. Choose a different thought and see what happens. Because this is how we get conditioned in the first place. I'm going to say it again, as I've said it before. We learn things over time, which means that we can not unlearn things necessarily, but teach ourselves new things that replace the old things. And that's the amazing thing about being a spirit, having this temporary human experience, is the human part of us is very malleable. It's very expansive and capable. And when we just recognize that about ourselves, that we are capable of so much and that we've got this, we can go that extra mile that allows us to really just breathe, relax, and finally soak in that which is healthy for us that actually leads to real, true happiness. All right, guys, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for joining me for another video. And as always, may the energies you serve you well. Links in the description if you feel so called to check them out. And let's keep making our way through.